How's it going, y'all? Rafa the Pickleball Tech Dude here. The Franklin C45 completed its full drop officially a little over a week and a half ago, and it's a paddle that I get asked about more than almost any other paddle nowadays. It currently sits at a price of $229, but using my discount code RAFA at checkout or just clicking the affiliate link in the description provides you a bit of a discount, bringing that price closer to $200. And full disclosure, it does provide me a small kickback, which I pour 150% back into these videos to make them even better. The main reason I wanted to do this video is because I feel like this paddle paints a different playing experience in my mind than it seems to for some other people. And so I want to explain that a little bit by first going over the stats, the construction style, and of course a short breakdown of the paddle's internals. Talk about the playtesting experience, including what I particularly enjoyed, and especially the modifications that I feel the paddle really needs to reach its peak performance. And then finish off with some shortcomings that I feel like were not quite emphasized enough and have slowly swayed my opinion on the paddle overall. So let's talk about it. Here are the stats that I recorded on the C45, and the number one thing to pay attention to is that stock. This paddle has an extremely low swing weight, making it one of the fastest paddles in the hands that I've ever hit. What else is important to note is, as is often the case with hybrid-shaped low swing weight paddles, the twist weight on this paddle is very low, and it does correlate with a very small sweet spot stock, very reminiscent of a Paddletech Bantam TKO. I specify hybrid shape because the whole purpose of standard shape paddles is to be low swing weight and high twist weight, so there is a difference there. Other than those stats, this is a high pop paddle, and it also has enough power for me to classify it as a power paddle, but nothing that's going to blow you away for a Gen 3 construction. And similar story for spin. It's a high spin paddle, but fairly average, especially amongst recent releases. I've hinted a bit at construction already, but this is a Gen 3 foam enhanced paddle with the diving board style construction that was popularized by Yola's Gen 3s. Something to note is that this paddle currently includes a thermoforming process that to my knowledge is not used on any other paddle. And it's essentially a double thermoforming process, whereby the carbon fiber sheets are thermoformed along with the polypropylene core prior to any paddle shape being cut out. And then following that process, a CNC machine cuts out the dual foam channels, and then the entire paddle is thermoformed again with the foam enhancements. The face layup on this paddle is triple layered carbon fiber laid at 45 degree, 90 degree, and 45 degree angles. This is meant to prolong the durability of the spin on the paddle and is where the paddle gets its name, C45. And the only discernible difference between this foam and, say, the foam in the Yola Pro 4s is that these foams are noticeably a bit higher in density, indicating why this paddle may not hit as hard as the Pro 4s. Now, when it comes to playability, the main thing you need to understand is that playing this paddle stock, it is simply not good. The ball feedback is simply not pleasant, the sweet spot feels fairly small, and you will not get any plow through or solid contact on balls, whether it's drives or drops. And to give credit to Franklin, their previous paddle drop was one of the heaviest swing weight paddles on the market at over 135. So, moving into this paddle, one of their main intentions behind its creation was to make it a lot more customizable, and that it certainly is and certainly needs. My personal preferred weight setup was 6 inches of 0.5 gram density tungsten tape from Bodhi Pickleball from the throat up the sides of the paddle, as well as 10 more inches evenly distributed across the top of the head. This adds 0.5 ounces to the static weight. It brings the swing weight up to only 108, but it brings the twist weight all the way up to 6.6, with bringing the balance point down 0.1 inches as well. And for lack of a better term, it makes this paddle usable. Now, with that said, with this weight setup, the paddle doesn't just become usable, it actually does start to play pretty dang well. The swing weight is still very low for fast hand speed. The stability on the off-center shots is vastly improved, along with the sweet spot size. And while the resets and plow through the ball are still a bit subpar to me, they do feel like they get to a point where you can adjust through practice. In terms of feel, you still get strong feedback from the ball striking, but that feedback instead translates as more lively and springy off the paddle face, as opposed to something that's more tingy and harsh and unpleasant, like a ping pong paddle, which is sort of how I would describe the stock experience. From a power and control perspective, again, the key here was the weight setup. It allows you to unlock the power, which I'd put in line with a broken in Pickleball Apes Pulse or an Engage Pursuit Pro 1. And from a control perspective, it's very much in league with a slightly weighted up Paddletech Bantam TKOC 12.7. So if you've tried and failed with that paddle, you're probably not going to like the C45, but I think a lot of advanced players have come to enjoy the feel of that paddle. All right, now let's talk a couple of things that I feel like need to be communicated a little bit more effectively before you make the decision to buy this paddle. And the first one is that this is not a paddle that I would describe as plush. When I think plush, I think paddles that can truly pocket the ball that you can feel and launch off, kind of like a slingshot. I'm thinking the Honolulu J2K, the Chorus Shapeshifter, the 11624 Power Paddles, the Yola Pro 4s, the Mavericks Clash Pro, the Gearbox Pro Ultimate Elongated, and the list goes on and on and on. With the C45, due to its diving board construction, you do achieve a level of dwell and flex in the face that you can feel on the ball, but the face is so poppy and lively that the ball comes off the face with such rapid speed that it's not a paddle that you can feel the ball really sink into and launch out of, and therefore, in my mind, is not a paddle that I would consider to be plush. The second factor here is that there is a slight manufacturing defect going around with the C45s, and I want to be very careful in saying that this is not a defect that would cause your paddle to be out of spec or truly play any different. It's really more of an optics situation. And that is that the glue becomes loose in the C45s for the most part fairly quickly. Now, this is not the first paddle where after some playing time, the glue does become loose, and you can tell by shaking your paddle, it'll sound kind of like a maraca or like a jar of rice. But after hitting my C45, the glue became loose after just one game to 11. And after speaking with many others in my community who play with this paddle, they've experienced something very similar. Now, again, to be very, very, very clear and transparent, this is not an issue that's going to cause your paddle to go out of spec or play any differently. Rather, it was just something that was a little bit annoying to me. As if I'm spending $200 on a paddle, I would rather that be an issue that I incur after hours or months of gameplay as opposed to just a few minutes. Now, granted, I was an early recipient of the C45 as a review unit, so it's very possible that Franklin has already fixed this in future batches, but even if they haven't, I am 100% confident that Franklin is aware of this issue, as myself and other reviewers have already communicated it, and it is definitely something that I would expect them to fix when it comes time for the future launches in different shapes. And my last sort of gripe about the C45 in its current state, if you will, is that it needs significantly more weight and higher density weight than even what I have put on it for every single ball contact to actually feel consistent and solid. With my personal weight setup, it's enough to say that the C45 does have really nice performance. But you'll notice the more and more reviews you watch of this paddle, it seems the more weight that is added and the higher density of the tungsten tape, the better the paddle performance gets. The bigger the sweet spot, the bigger the stability, etc., etc. My qualm with this is that a customizable paddle, in my opinion, should already be decent stock and then just need modifications in order to bring out certain strong qualities. This has not been my experience with the C45. You'll notice that other weight setups are much more extensive to mine and bring the swing weights up to very high numbers, which not only completely defeats the purpose of having that super high power to hand speed ratio that this paddle is unique for, but it also puts a lot of onus on you as the consumer to make certain targeted modifications, which not everybody in my experience is comfortable with. A couple of changes that Franklin might be considering in order to improve this need for extensive customization would be to thicken the walls of the polypropylene core, which from my dissection are a little bit on the thin side, as well as improving the wall-to-wall thickness of the foam channels or simply increasing their density further. And these are all changes that would bring the static and swing weight of these paddles up, but again, I think are necessary to make the paddles play well stock. And with all that said, that's going to wrap up my thoughts on the C45. If I had to summarize it into one sentence, and it'll probably be in the thumbnail, it would simply be, I need more. Granted, you might see completely opposite to me on everything that I raised today, and some people do. If you're one of those people, make sure you let me know down in the comments, where you'll also find the link to purchase the C45, which again goes a long way to helping out the channel. But if you do agree with me, I know for a fact that Franklin will be releasing the C45, perhaps under a different name, but at the very minimum, in different shapes. And so again, if you agree with me, you will also be waiting patiently and in super high anticipation of what those paddles might bring in terms of improvements over the hybrid shape. But again, with all of that said, I hope you all learned something. I hope you're all subscribed at this point, and I hope you stay happy and healthy, and of course, out on the courts until the next video. Peace. That was long overdue.